Hello, thank you to everyone joining us either live or later on through the recording that we upload. Today, we'll be discussing the results from the world's largest school survey that revealed the biggest trends with student, tech, and social media. My name is Karen Kwasi, and I'm representing one of the hosting organizations called the Educating All Learners Alliance, or ELA for short. ELA is a coalition of over 100 partner organizations that seek to support students with disabilities through curating an extensive resource library and just sharing helpful examples as well as information within the education community. We are super excited today to be joined by the Social Institute and explore the insights from this huge survey. And before I pass it over, just a quick note, please feel free to leave any questions that you may have throughout the presentation within the chat, and we'll try to go through them at the end. And with that, I'll now pass it on over to Laura Tierney, and she'll take it from there.
Thank you so much. And thanks to the entire team at ELA. I really appreciate being here with you all today. And we're going to cover a lot of ground. I want to go ahead and share my screen so you can see, since I tend to be quite a visual communicator. If you are here to talk about those trends with students, technology, and social media, you're in the right place. And just for a quick background on where I'm coming from today, I founded the Social Institute about 6 years ago with this mission of empowering students at the intersection of well-being, social skills, and social media and technology. I am so passionate about this mission because I lived it, the problem that I'm trying to solve. I'm a digital native. I got a phone when I was 13 years old, and I had to navigate middle school, high school, college, and beyond, and all of the pitfalls and landmines that come with social media and technology. And I believe that students today, they need thoughtful coaching when it comes to this space, and we have to talk up to them, not talk down to them, because they are at the cutting edge of social media and technology. And so what we're going to cover today is we're going to look at the top apps and devices that students are using most in our survey of students across the country. We'll look at the role that technology plays in school culture. And then last but not least, look at ways to empower students to navigate social media and technology productively. And so let's go ahead and jump into the first insight that we certainly captured from our survey. And we'll dive into this a bit more and share with you all the data to prove this. For students, as you may know, social media to them is simply being social, and it's not going away anytime soon. And the research shows that students, technology is being woven into their lives more and more and more. 43% of students say they got their first social media account between the ages of 12 and 13. And then, meanwhile, if you see that survey on the right there, that stat, that 45% of teachers believe that social media can actually enhance students' academic performance. And that involves students developing skills of time management and having that self-confidence to not give in to the different pressures, or knowing how to navigate those difficult but common situations, like commenting on someone's photo or being a part of a certain group chat or not being a part of a certain group chat. When we ask students, okay, well, what are your top 5 devices that you use on a weekly basis? We polled students across the country. And what we found is that when you divide here between middle school and high school, you'll see that there's definitely a lot of school issued tech in that middle school space, no surprise. And check out how high the gaming devices are with middle school students. On the right-hand side, no surprise that smartphones are all the way up and to the right with those older students. But then you also see gaming being a lot lower, and certainly school issued tech being up there as well. Let's go ahead and look at the top 5 apps between middle school and high school. I love this one because check out all the different options on the screen. Some of these apps you might be like, yep, I've heard of them. I know them pretty well. Some of these like, Twitch or Discord, House Party, you may or may not be as familiar with. When we filter these, you see, YouTube is definitely taking the lead for those middle school students. And then those high school students, I mean, email is technically social. It's screenshotable and shareable and lets you connect with people. But right behind that definitely is YouTube, followed by Instagram and Snapchat. And that may or may not surprise you that Instagram and Snapchat rank below that 58% for middle school students. So the next time a seventh grader or an eighth grader comes to you and is like, but everyone is on TikTok and that's why I want to be using TikTok, you can be like, well, this woman who was leading this webinar and surveyed students across the country told me a little bit differently. We also took a look at how different genders are navigating this topic. So when we ask girls, okay, out of all the different apps out there, what apps are your go-to apps on a regular basis? Your go-to, 43% of girls ranked TikTok as their go-to app. Texting was right behind that at 36% of girls ranked that, and then 31% ranked YouTube. And then 57% for TikTok in high school, and you can see the differences there. Now let's head over to what the boys said. TikTok was in the lead for the girls, and also no surprise, YouTube came in the lead for the boys, and followed definitely by gaming. Gaming was very much up there, and notice how much lower TikTok was for those boys compared to the girls if we juxtapose that here. And I thought this trend was really interesting, is that for boys, 50% of them said that they use social media, but they don't necessarily post anything, compared to 34% of girls. And so whenever we're talking about social media here, I mentioned it today, just think of it as that could be watching videos, that could be watching YouTube videos of other people gaming. It could be uploading videos that you create, and it could be just simply liking content. Those are all different ways that students are socializing. And it's not only limited to the idea of posting something, on Instagram or TikTok, you name it. The survey results, some of these survey results that I'm sharing with you, we pulled together into one really impressive infographic, and I'll page down the infographic so you can see some of it here on the screen. And as you can see here, there's a QR code up there. So if you want to, you can just simply hold your device up to the screen right now, and you could get the direct link to this infographic. I'm only showing you about 50% of it. And so you can go ahead and access it there if you'd like. If for some reason, I don't know, your camera's busted, then feel free to go to our website, which is thesocialinstitute.com, and then click on resources, and you'll be able to access this infographic along with a few other reports, white papers, and different playbooks that we have for educators. This brings me to the second insight, which is that, believe it or not, social media is definitely one of the greatest enablers of students' health, happiness, and future success. And the way we look at that is, there's so many ways that there's so many pitfalls that are associated with social media. And we got this distinction between the student when we would brainstorm with students. We referred to it as sort of winning at social versus making choices that put you in really negative situations on the right-hand side there. And the more and more we're seeing news stories and behaviors and trends in our results that show that students are strengthening their reputation and cultivating their self-esteem, landing great internships and jobs, or playing to their values and character, or simply just connecting with friends during all these weird social distancing times that we're going through right now. And the more that as educators, we can help students play to that left-hand side by not only talking about the positives, but by coaching them through positives. And what that means is rather than leading with a lot of don'ts, right? Don't do this, don't do that, don't join that app, don't ever text someone that. Imagine if you were like playing soccer, and imagine if your coach just constantly told you that don't kick the ball that way, don't pass it that way, don't shoot it that way, don't try to score that way. You'd be on the soccer field, right? Being like, well, what should I do? And frankly, I'm about to give up this sport because it's like it's being framed in such a negative way. And so the more that we could come at this from a positive, the more students I feel like will open their ears up to hearing out adults and ways that we could make positive choices day in and day out. The next insight that I'd like to share is the idea that no year of a student's life is the same socially. And so for schools, what that means is that social media education really needs to evolve as students' social experiences evolve. And we all know that there's different, I'm sorry, y'all. I feel like I'm the only millennial in North Carolina that has a house phone. If you can hear my phone going off right now, hopefully that'll be picked up in just a second. If not, just ignore the phone in the background if you could hear that. So there are, I feel like this is a multitasking challenge. All right, now that the ringing is over. There are all different challenges that are growing in schools, right? There's students being distracted, there's students being expelled, there's students who are not getting enough sleep because they're using their devices, late into the night, and they were never coached on the idea of, devices limiting the amount of melatonin that your body produces. And frankly, I would throw us adults into that same boat. Like we might not have been coached either on the implications of some of these choices that we make with technology. And so we are hearing, higher than ever levels of cyberbullying and anxiety and drama that are happening in the classrooms and in the hallways and outside of school. And the line is so blurred, right? There's not this idea that if something happens outside of school, it doesn't come into school today. Like it's the school, the line of where the school ends just kind of vanished, and you have all of your classmates, you're connected with them just at the tip of your fingers now. And so in order to address all of these challenges, our team at TSI, we recommend developing a common language with students. And with students across the country, we would recommend this common language, this idea of challenging students to live up to high standards. Now, number one, the word challenge is such a great word to use with students. Instead of saying like, you have to do this or lecturing them, the idea of challenging a student to set a bar where they want to set it. And I always tell students, like, you get to set that bar as high as you want. And knowing that depending on how high you set it, that impacts your health, your happiness, your friendships, your future success in school, out of school. And so this common language then that we, challenge them to live up to these standards are playing to their core values, protecting your privacy, kind of like you're famous, striking a balance with technology, Cyberbacking is a term a student came up with, and it's the straight opposite of cyberbullying. Finding your influencers is surrounding yourself with positive role models and credible influences, using your mic for good, and really amplifying your voice to create meaningful change in the world. And last but not least, handling the pressure and definitely rising above different social pressures. And again, I'm a visual learner, and so I'd love to show you ways that you could challenge students to develop skills for each one of these standards over developmentally over time. And again, full transparency, right? I'm coming at this as a partner to schools. At the Social Institute, we have a curriculum that we provide to schools so that they could run different lessons throughout the year. But whether you build lessons at your own school internally, if that's your passion, or if you want to work with a partner, like whatever you feel like is the right move for your community, make sure that these lessons, of course, are developmentally relevant for each, for the different students. And here's a look at what this could look like for grade levels, or certainly I know with some schools, it's not so much by grade level, there might be mixed, grades. And so whatever that looks like at your school, the main takeaway here is that these lessons need to grow with students. And so if you see on the screen here, like grade 4, maybe we might focus on game planning to get the most out of our day, while grade 7 is exploring how and when to communicate over text and in person. And I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I feel like us adults need some practice on the grade 7 one every now and then. I feel like not a few days go by where I'm just like, oh, I should have called someone and said that maybe instead of texting them that. Why did I do that? Undo. And so we need reminders. And if you look at how this spirals, all of the students are learning about striking a balance and balancing, whether it's their time or their attention. And repetition, as we know, is the mother of learning. Repetition is the mother of learning. And so this is not like, oh, let's have students learn about like striking a balance in, when they're around 5th grade or age 13, and then they could just move on from it. Everything else that we learn in school we know that repetition is the mother of learning, through math, through science. And this is something that we are interacting with regularly, like these social skills, these social relationships, self-management, and so much more. Now, the other thing that I'll just quickly share from a creative curriculum development, from a curriculum developer, to others out there, is that the other wonderful thing that students really appreciate when it comes to this type of education is when you can weave in what is trending and going on in their world, right? We all know that. It's kind of like, well, no surprise, Laura, I'm telling you what you already know. But I'm sharing that just as a friendly reminder that when you look at some of the trending news stories that in your feed, whether that is Russia's invasion of Ukraine, you can teach the power of misinformation and how people are consuming different types of content, for better or worse, because of that relevant trend that's going on in the world. Students are seeing it in their feeds. Your teachers are seeing it in their feeds. Everyone can relate to it. And that is the key word here, is it has to be relevant. If it's not relevant, it's not engaging. If it's not engaging, it's not worth doing with the students, because obviously you need their engagement if you're going to talk about social media and technology and well-being. And so if you, again, take a look at some of these topics on the screen here, like in November 2021, some of you all might recall when that classified report came out from Facebook, those Facebook files, right? And it talked about the impact of Instagram on students' well-being. Well, again, you can use that timely topic to help students think about how social media impacts their well-being. And so just building those really meaningful connections is really important. Okay. The next question that we're going to dive into, and I also have a little pop quiz for you on this one. The more that we proactively develop the whole student, the more that we all win. I'm talking about students, I'm talking about educators, and I'm talking about families. And the research shows, the research done by one of the leading organizations in social emotional education found that when a school supports those three groups, students, parents, and educators, that is when the most effective change and impact occurs at a school, is because the students are learning along with their role models. Makes sense. Except a lot of schools, they will choose to move forward with just like, hey, just the students are going to get the education, or we're just going to have a parent presentation where this happens. Think of it as like a three-legged table. And if you take away one of those legs, the table it doesn't stand as firmly. So obviously, when you develop the whole student, you have to keep in mind their whole world. And technology is a big part of that world. And so pop quiz here, how many students percentage-wise do you think have access to social media by sixth grade? If you had to lock in on a number, Price is Right style, what would you say without going over? Well, if you guessed 58%, you are, or 57%, you are close to winning that round. 58% of sixth graders say they use social media on a weekly basis. And then 59% of those students say they use a smartphone on a weekly basis. And look how that number gets to be over 50% by sixth grade. So the majority of our students around the age of sixth grade have a lot of access, and their world is, they're exposed to a whole lot more than we think. And the more that schools can get out of that position of playing whack-a-mole, right? Where it's like, oh, now we have to deal with this situation. Now we have to deal with this. And now a student posted this. And now we have this group chat going on that we have to diffuse. The goal is to get ahead of that. And so whether that is introducing education, like there's so many schools now that are introducing this education as young as like second grade or third grade. And we could certainly be introducing core values like kindness and, and more, and earlier elementary grade levels. On the right hand side, you could see where high schoolers are saying they got their first smartphone or their first social media account, with it definitely, peaking in sort of age 12 for a smartphone and age 13 for a social media account. Now I'm going to keep rolling here with insight number 5, the last insight here, that schools can tap into something really meaningful when it comes to education about this topic. They could tap into the power of role models, positive role models. And who better to get some respect from students, but older students. And so a lot of schools are activating mentors and student leader mentors. And a great example of this is there's a school out in California, St. Margaret's, and they launched a digital mentor program where it's led by different high school peer counselors. And again, if you hold up your phone to that QR code right now, you'll be able to bring up that article, and it talks about how they make this program happen. Now, whether or not you have access to a high school or older students, 8th graders can be doing that, with younger students. You can have students apply and they could co-facilitate lessons with younger students. But I think just kudos to St. Margaret's. I know a lot of other schools that are doing this throughout the country. It's really impressive, and it's I think it starts to hint at the future of social media education for schools. And speaking of the future of social media education, I think there's a clear distinction between what's working and what isn't for schools. The idea of looking at this as these are simply life skills that students need right now for a world that will always have technology in it. There are a lot of schools that think of this as, well, there's digital citizenship over here. And then over here, there's like mental health and wellness, but they distinguish the two. And that's not the case. Like all of these are important skills that students just like, they just see them as skills. Like there's no reason to put digital citizenship in one corner and then social emotional health in a different corner. It's all intertwined. And instead of being reactive, how can we be more proactive? I love the next line. Instead of scaring and restricting social media and technology, how can we empower and equip students? And here's a few more. If you downloaded that infographic report that I had on the screen earlier, you'll see some of these statistics and more. And I want to give you a quick snapshot of some other things that we learned in this nationwide survey that we were talking about at the beginning of this session. We posed some of these upcoming questions to different students, and I'm curious to think if you were to get in the heads of these students, what would you respond in some of these situations? Let's say we were to ask fifth graders, okay, imagine your friend sent you a link to a YouTube video and you start watching it and someone starts using offensive language that made you feel uncomfortable. What would you do? And we put all different positive moves in front of the students as a way of, teaching them some of the positive things they could do. Would you exit the video and not reply to your friend? Would you tell your friend that you're not into videos like that? Would you tell your parent about the video? What would you say? 40% of students locked in on that last one. And it's this what you're seeing here is just a kind of a tip of the iceberg of how we collaborate with students to help them think through different situations. We put them in different real life situations and ask them ways that they could positively navigate it. This next question that we had for 8th grade students, I'm curious, this is less of a role play situation and more to get their thoughts on this question. How often do you see, younger students, we use the language here, like being more and more hooked on our digital devices and looking down, and, 37, the majority of students saying often or always. And that's where you can tap into those older student leaders to think about, they clearly see this going on in the world. How could they be part of the change? For 12th graders here, this was a really interesting question that they shared. Talking openly about failure isn't easy for students and adults, and it requires a heavy dose of self-awareness. And imagine you're in an interview and the interviewer says, "Tell me about a time when you failed." What answer could you relate to and share? Is it getting a surprisingly low grade? Is it feeling like you let someone else down by not living up to their expectations, not performing well, or being turned down, for an opportunity? What do you think? What answer do you feel like 12th grade students locked in the most on? If you said 38%, you are correct. And the structure of questions that I just showed you, one was kind of a role play question. Another challenged you to think about how often you're encountering something in your life. And this other question, kind of put you through a situation and literally asked you to think about what would you say in that situation, which is therefore prepping you. I was a student athlete growing up, and think of this as practice before it's game time. And if you don't practice a play, it's less likely that you will be able to master that move or that play during any game. And so what you're seeing here is this idea that the more we can proactively practice plays with students, plays that they're going to need to be healthy, happy, and successful, the more that we all win. There is a report that our team created based on all the insights that you saw today. And it's called our annual social student report. And it's a pretty impressive kind of like white paper report that many schools have like printed out and shared with their principal or other counselors at the school. And it's so many insights that you saw today and a whole lot more. Like we look at a lot more of the trending apps among students. We look at other statistics related to COVID and students' impact on well-being. And so again, feel free to just scan that code that you see on the screen right now, and that'll take you to the report. As we are wrapping up here, I wanted to share a quick just request of you all. Our team at the Social Institute, we thrive on feedback. Feedback is a gift to us. It helps us continue to make sure that we are bringing the best student intelligence and resources to these sessions. And so we would love to hear your thoughts. If you wouldn't mind scanning that QR code and filling out the session survey, it might ask you like which of the social standards really resonates with your school, with you or your school the most. And it's good feedback for us to help make sure that we are understanding the latest, most important needs for schools. And if you did hear anything today that you had questions about, or how we might be able to support your school, I just did want to give a shout out. These are just some of the school communities that we partner with across the country, supporting them with a very comprehensive approach to helping students navigate all things social. And that could be character development, current events, emotional intelligence, and more. And so here just, we certainly support students, families, educators. I know there's a lot of words on the screen here, but the main takeaway is that it is a team effort and it's about supporting all of those different audiences. And so if your school is just looking for some pointers on, because you're looking to build out something yourself and you want some free resources on our website, we'd certainly be happy to share. Our website is thesocialinstitute.com. Tons of great free resources there. And you can also, if you want to reach out, you can request a demo of our curriculum, which has all those lessons that I showed you, and a whole lot more. Definitely want to take any questions if folks want to drop those into the chat or into the Q&A, or of course, if you're watching this on a recording, feel free to reach out on our website if you have any questions.
All right, so we have a question here. Someone asks, where on the site is the infographic?
Let me go ahead and telling you, I'm a visual learner, or so I'm a visual communicator. So let me pull that up. So if you're on the socialinstitute.com and then you go to resources, so I will do that right along with you. You're here and you click up on resources, and then you go to TSI Insights right there. This page has a whole lot of different downloads. So here's that report, the 22 Insights for 2022 about social media and student well-being. And there's a whole lot of other white papers and reports. We also have our 2021 report, if you care to look at how things evolved over time. We have a playbook on how schools are funding this education in all different creative ways, the social media's role in student well-being. So feel free to download anything and everything that might that catch your eye on that page.
Yes, any more questions?
A popular question that we do get is like, where does our school start? And like, how do we even address this? Where do we weave it in? And a lot of schools are looking at things like homeroom or advisory or health and wellness classes or grade level meetings or community time as a way of supporting the students. And then what they do is then like those advisors or those teachers will then send discussion questions home to family members so parents or guardians can continue the conversation at home. And I think that's such a beautiful approach because it allows the school to really spark that discussion, and the school is the most social setting possible. So students are with their peers, they have a chance to discuss these meaningful topics, and then they can go home and almost like coach up and coach the adults on what they learned. Those It's important that you frame those family questions not as like a, well, let me quiz you on what you learned today. That's talking down to the students. Instead, think of a question like, hey, I know you talked about like balancing technology today. Like, could you help me? Like, what are one or two tips you would give to me to help me balance it? There's no better way to learn something than to have to teach it, right? To others. Think about the last time you had to teach something. Like, you process that information a whole lot better because you had to teach it. So let's do that with students, and put them in the driver's seat and challenge them to coach up. And I think a lot of so much impact can come from that.
Yeah, and I'll actually ask one last question before we wrap up. So we've seen over in the past years, social media and education in school, like those are not two things that we would put together. And especially like with electronic devices, that's something like if it's not school administered, it was almost like prohibited. But now over the years, we've seen how that's changed drastically. What do you think is one thing that I would say the schools, because we know how students will benefit from schools incorporating more social media, but what's one way that you think that schools can actually benefit by taking this new approach and embracing social media and technology?
How will they benefit? Oh, I mean, I think, well, one is you get ahead of this and you save a whole lot more time. So faculty, like right now, we know faculty burnout. I mean, you all know this. It's like it's higher than ever. And faculty are feeling like, oh, we just don't want one more thing to do. But you can, instead of spending those hours like reacting to situations that happen or having to deal with those questions, the more you, when you provide proactive education, you save a lot of time that you would have to spend. So time savings is huge. We are obviously, all of us educators are, we want to see students shine. And the research shows that, colleges and employers, they now value those social emotional skills as much, if not more, than the technical skills that schools of course are also teaching. So that matters a whole lot. And then I think certainly the building a school environment that uh, is like attractive, to parents, and it creates a stronger community and just that connection with families. So the families know what's going on when you provide that education. And then last but not least is when you have this education happening, you just get a stronger school culture. Like imagine a culture where, students are not bashing each other online and that drama isn't taken into the classroom and you don't have to deal with all of that stuff that is bubbling up right now in a lot of schools. And there are so many other consequences that we don't have to get into, but it boils down to the also the idea like students are, you see headlines like students are taking their lives over th- this that's happening right now. And you read the newspapers and it could it breaks your heart what students are having to navigate. And the studies show that in the last 2 years, 20% of students 2 years ago had access to devices, that schools were giving them access to devices. That number now, after the pandemic, has jumped up to be around 70% of kids across the nation were handed a device by a school out of good intentions to say, this is yours now. You get to use it. This is going to support your education. And we have a right, if we are giving them the keys to the car, we have a right to put them through driver's ed, right? And so I, for those benefits and so many more, I appreciate that question. And I think culture, time savings, and so much more can come from this. I'm just going to take a few other questions here. Oh yeah, that's great. How do you help to get others to see the time up front pays in the long run? So there's a lot of certainly there's schools there that are looking at doing like their own studies. It's a lot harder, of course, because you need a lot of time to pass in order to show the benefit of that. So if you are looking for some quick hitting research on this, on the value of it, I'll put it in the chat right here, some of the statistics that our team has found. There's certainly a lot of research on this on our website as well. And some of the other great studies we pulled from here. I'll put this in the chat. But the research, two of the immediate stats that come to me, if you have a stats administration, they love statistics and they need that in front of them as they're considering programming like this. Research shows that schools that provide this education to students compared to schools that don't, those students who receive this education have academic scores that are 11 percentile points higher than students who don't receive education on social emotional skill building. So I'm talking about, right, the ability to be empathetic, because you need that with technology and you need that in person too. Having self-awareness, problem solving, and a whole lot more. 11 percentile points difference. There's another study that showed that when schools invested in this education up front, there is an 11-to-1 ROI, which means that for every dollar that a school invested, they saved $11 later on by not having to play whack-a-mole and invest in outsourcing stuff. It's just the proactive investment beats the reactive whack-a-mole approach. And
I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah. Let me see. In today's client, schools being scrutinized and bashed. Okay, that's a great question. So there's as we know, you look at some headlines now. Some schools can call this, modern social emotional learning, right? You hear that word being thrown around a lot, social emotional learning or student social emotional well-being, education on that. And parents can quickly say, well, it's not schools place to teach that. It's man, there's articles out there about parents saying it's attached to critical race theory and it's attached to all these other things that they don't want the school associated with. And what I've found is that it's really important to not describe it as just a noun, because a noun can be interpreted in all different ways. When a school more approaches it as, no, here's what we're doing. We are looking at self-awareness. We want our students to have self-awareness. We want them to make responsible decisions. I find that no parent is
no, I don't want my kid making responsible decisions, or I don't want them being self-aware. It's when you use it as a noun, I feel like there's a lot of room for interpretation. And so that's why I think the idea of social emotional learning right now, it's just that noun form of it can be misconstrued by families. And so I would not just put SEL out there because it has connotations. And so instead, really be descriptive about this efforts. What are you looking to do? What are some of the outcomes? We want students to be able to recognize their emotions in different situations, right? Like no parent, would say, I don't want that life skill for my child. So really be clear about that when you're introducing this to families to help get their buy-in. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Sandra, thank you for sharing that. You absolutely to use Castle's core competencies and use their wheel to describe that. And of course, there are you can look up soft skills, as well, like problem solving, creativity, and a whole lot more.
Yeah, well, I think that wraps us up. Thank you so much, Laura. You shared so many insightful tips and information that I know the audience and everyone, not just here, but later on, will thoroughly enjoy. Thank you to your organization as well for doing such an important study and providing us with these insights. So yeah, thank you to everyone who joined us as well live and who will tune in later to watch this. And take care.
Thank you.